College football playoff. Ohio State played 15 games when it won the national title 10 years ago. You could potentially now, the 12-team playoff, play 17 games, or more likely maybe the chance to play 16.
Right.
Have you fully embraced this new playoff model? Do you have any concerns about the length of the season and the number of games for these football players?
Yeah, I have disagreed. I have a concern about the length of the season, and I've actually had concerns about the football student athlete experience, practice-wise overall. I don't worry about the games. Football players don't play that many games, frankly. So it's really about, making sure that you have a culture where the coach and the support staff, everybody understands, you gotta manage practice. You gotta take care of your bodies, muscle tissue issues, all those type of things. Athletes will, there's athletes who have a high tolerance for pain. Tommy Eichenberg, high tolerance for pain. If his shoulder was out, you tape it up and keep playing. So you got to help him from himself. So having coaches understand that part is critical. It's critical. Now this is for all sports, but in this case, football, I worry more about just the practice part, wear and tear on their bodies, and making sure that our sports science and our coaches are aligned to make sure we mitigate any issues. The games they don't play. If you ask a football player, they want to play more games. It's just minimize this practice thing that's become year round.
There's a million things we could talk about around the integration of these 4 new teams into the Big Ten.
Yeah.
In particular, the football schedule, what the Big Ten came up with, do you feel good about obviously maintaining the Ohio State-Michigan game, but like for instance, not maintaining the Ohio State-Penn State game? How do you think the Big Ten did when it came to working out these new football schedules?
I think we did pretty good. I mean, there's probably going to be changes down the road, and your first iteration of a model will be modified over time as we learn different things down the road. But I think it worked out pretty good. The Penn State thing, they're a competitive rivalry. They're not a historical rivalry like the team up north is. So giving that up periodically was the right thing to do for the overall good of the league. We were very strong that when we go west, we're going to have a bye date afterwards. Can that be maintained over time? I don't know. We'll learn that. But some of us were strong in the room that was important. So I think we did pretty good, but like with all of our sports, as those schedules are built, we'll get feedback from coaches and others, and a couple of years from now, the model might change slightly based upon what we learn.
Player compensation. There was just the rule, getting the law passed in Virginia, I guess today, even of that now NIL can come inside athletic departments. I think we all see where it's moving. Where does this end? And is it necessary? Will it be good? Can it work for athletic departments to directly pay athletes, or at least some athletes? And what are the trade-offs that may be made with that when it comes to filling the other 35 sports?
Yeah, that's the big elephant in the room. I think, will it work? Yeah, it'll work. You just have to figure out how. I just don't know what the revenue share model is going to be. There's going to be some revenue share, and obviously, football is very much a part of that. So I look at it this way, just simplifying it. It's room, board, books, and tuition, cost of attendance, Austin money, and I'm hopeful that it's NIL rights, whatever that number is. And so hopefully that happens. And for us, if not knowing what the court case is going to be, if it's just 85 scholarships or 125 football players, but you got 125 football players, you got 13 basketball players, you have 138 So you gotta, for us at least, you gotta find 138 women on the other side. So we got 276 student athletes. You gotta figure out what that model is. And, what is that other number? I call it NIL rights. Then you create a licensing program for all of your student athletes. You bring NIL in-house like Virginia's doing. And you allow the university and you allow the athletic department to be able to do NIL deals for those student athletes. And the beauty part of that is you could create profiles for those student athletes. And I used to, said Key's going to Dayton now, but I used to always say, well, we should get him a deal with an auto parts company, because the guy likes to work on cars. Or those of you who went to the Peach Bowl and saw Matt Jones bowl, I'm like, God, we missed the bowl on that. We would have been, he's a 300 bowler. We should have had him working at a bowling alley. Whatever.
Yeah.
So you find those things that they're good at or interested in, and I think that's the model that I would say is a framework for the future.
But not sharing TV money?
Well, yeah, that's the revenue share.
Okay.
So excuse me. So whatever that is, that number is, it would come from TV money, corporate sponsorship, ticket sales. So yes, that revenue share. It actually, let's break it down. It's still house case in California. Whether it's settled or goes to court, I don't know. But they're at the plaintiffs. Jeffrey Kessler is the attorney, who's phenomenal. I got a lot of respect for him. I think they started at 50% of those dollars, media rights dollars, corporate dollars. So who knows what it's going to end up at? But that's, in my view, that's the one where it's going to tell us this is what it's going to be.
The idea of a super league for college football is something that has been sort of floated out there for a long time. Would you be in favor of that? Do you think we will get to that, a world where we're not dealing with the Big Ten or a conference discussion like that, where maybe there's the 35 wealthiest or biggest football teams are in a different tier, it's just a different model completely? Do you think we will get there? Would you be in favor of it?
I don't know if we'll get there or not. I think we got to be open to that conversation. What the private equity people are talking about. So I read about it, and I haven't paid a lot of attention to it. I would be more concerned about the revenue share. It's 70 teams I think I read about and heard about, but the Ohio States of the world aren't going to feed everybody.
But hasn't Ohio State fed everybody?
No, we've only fed some of the teams in our league, and they fed us. We got to play somebody. So at the end of the day, you're talking 70 versus 18, and you're talking 16 in the SEC. So it's simple math. At the end of the day, and then, by the way, we're not the only school in our league that feeds others. Mm-hmm. So now you're talking 70. I struggle with that, and then maybe there's something I'm missing on the private equity side, and I'm not in the mix. But I think we got to pay attention to that. We got to listen. We got to learn, because maybe that might be the right model. But I know this. I won't be in the seat, but places like Ohio State, if they're in that model, it can't be like the NFL model where revenue is shared equally. We don't draft, we recruit. And we chase championships and make investments to chase championships in football. Everybody else doesn't do that.
We've had many conversations. You've said this many times in your tenure, like a rising tide lifts all boats.
Mm-hmm.
And Ohio State, sometimes I said, Gene, why doesn't Ohio State throw its weight around more in the Big Ten? You wanted the Big Ten to succeed as a group. Right. We saw when Texas threw its weight around in the Big 12, it basically blew up the Big 12. This seems like a different conversation now. And is this because if we're entering a world where universities are going to pay players directly, money has already driven a lot in college sports, but if we're entering this new reality, a place like Ohio State is going to have to be a little more looking out for itself, and we're not as interested in sharing revenue equally? Because you shared revenue equally in the Big Ten since you
Yeah,
got
in the
here.
Big Ten, but it's simple math. You're talking about 70 schools versus 18 schools.
But
Now
do you
we're
think,
talking about, I shouldn't pick on these schools, but schools that aren't in the
Right.
Big Ten or the SEC. So Texas and Alabama are going in the SEC, they're sharing revenue with schools that don't bring in the same amount of revenue. Now you're talking about 70. Maybe there's something I obviously don't see,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, I'm not going to pull out names, but I don't have a problem with sharing revenue with the teams in our league, and we're not the only ones. You know, the team up north, Penn State, I mean, they're sharing revenue with teams in our league. But now you're saying you're going to add more of those teams.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
do you believe that we could get to a model where football players are not necessarily students of a university, but it's sort of you license the name and there's an association, but it's not the same relationship as it is now? Do you think we will get there? Would you understand if we did?
I'd hate it. I mean, I think whatever model exists has to be tethered to education. I mean, all the blessings that I've had, thinking back, not just football players, athletes over the years, we've changed so many people's lives. Many of them come into us and they're very mature and they're focused and they get things done, and we're facilitating their time and helping them develop. But there's some that come to us at a very immature level, and we do a great job of getting them maturity and a great job of helping the light bulb come on for them. And I can give you names of student athletes where I'm like, oh my God, the light bulb came on. And it could be academic, it could be athletic, or whatever it is. I just think in higher education, we gotta keep it tethered to education. If not, if it's not a part of that, then, make it semi-pro and just take it outside the institution, and you pay the institution a contract to use the stadium, and that model would bother me. Because I would know that those student athletes who, regardless of the fact that they might be getting some level of money, they're not being taught how to live the next part of their lives. I don't know, that's probably old school in me. I'm just passionate about giving these young people the opportunity to be educated. And there's so many of them. And a lot of them now live here in Columbus.
Yeah.
A lot of them.